Imagine being told you don't belong in the very place your ancestors built with their blood and sweat. What would you do? Today, one young man's response to such hatred left an entire grocery store speechless and changed lives forever. It was a sunny afternoon in a quiet Ohio neighborhood, the kind of place where people smile politely and chat about the weather. Inside the local grocery store, life moved at its usual rhythm. Shoppers browsed the aisles, carts squeaked on polished floors, and kids begged their parents for treats. Jamal, a young black man in his mid-20s, was among them. Dressed casually in a blue hoodie and jeans, he was juggling a basket of groceries in his phone, checking off items on his list. For Jamal, this was just another errand, until it wasn't. By the produce section, an elderly woman, frail but stern, adjusted her glasses and muttered impatiently. With her cardigan neatly buttoned and her silver hair pinned back, she seemed harmless, but her words shattered that illusion. "You people don't belong here," she said, loud enough to turn heads. Jamal froze mid-step. The woman's voice grew sharper. "Why don't you go back to Africa where you came from?" The hum of the store stopped. Conversations ceased. Eyes turned to Jamal. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Some shoppers looked down, pretending not to hear. Others exchanged uneasy glances, silently questioning what would happen next. Jamal stood still, his hand tightening around his basket. A storm brewed in his chest. Shock, hurt, and anger, but he didn't let it spill out. Instead, he drew a slow, deliberate breath. Have you ever been so stunned by someone's words that you didn't know how to react? Imagine being in Jamal's shoes right now. What would you do? The elderly woman, unshaken, stared him down as if daring him to respond. Around them, a silent crowd gathered, some curious, others nervous. Jamal shifted his weight, letting his basket rest on the floor. He straightened his posture, meeting her gaze with a calm intensity. "Ma'am," he began, his voice steady, "do you even realize what you just said?" Her response was swift and defiant. "I said what I said. People like you don't belong here. This is my country." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A cashier craned her neck to watch. A young mother ushered her child away. But Jamal didn't flinch. Instead of snapping back, he paused. His silence wasn't weakness, it was power. And when he finally spoke, his words carried the weight of generations. "You said I don't belong here," he repeated, his tone calm but piercing. He paused, scanning the faces around him. "Let me tell you where I come from." Every eye was fixed on him now, waiting. "My great-great-grandfather," Jamal said, "was born right here in America, Mississippi, to be exact. He worked as a sharecropper, breaking his back on land he didn't own so his kids could dream of a better life. And his father, he was a slave, ripped from his home, beaten, and sold like property to build this very country." The woman's defiance faltered slightly, but she stayed silent. "My grandfather fought in World War II," Jamal continued. "He risked his life for this country, only to come back and be told he couldn't sit at certain counters or drink from certain fountains. But he stayed, believing in America's promise even when it didn't believe in him." A hush fell over the store. Shoppers leaned in closer. "And my parents?" Hanging on to every word. Jamal's voice softened, but his conviction grew. "They taught me to believe in kindness, respect, and hard work. My mother, a teacher, spent her life shaping young minds, no matter what color they were. My father, a mechanic, would stop to help someone like you on the side of the road if your car broke down. So tell me, ma'am," Jamal said, his gaze unwavering, "do I still not belong here?" The tension was electric. Would she double down on her words? Would she apologize? The crowd held its collective breath. The elderly woman's face turned red. Her lips trembled as she clutched her bag of apples. She opened her mouth to speak but closed it again. Her words had abandoned her. Jamal didn't wait for her response. Instead, he turned to the crowd, his voice carrying through the store. "I could have walked away," he said, "but silence doesn't fix ignorance. Words like hers don't just hurt, they divide us. And it's up to all of us to be better than this." The crowd, moved by his courage and grace, began to applaud. Some nodded in agreement, others wiped away tears. The young cashier, who had been frozen in place, smiled with admiration. Jamal picked up his basket and turned back to the woman one last time. "Ma'am, I hope someday you'll see that we're more alike than different," he said. "But until then, I'll keep believing in the better side of people, even when it's hard." Without another word, he walked away, leaving the store filled with an air of reflection and hope. In a world where hate is loud, it's people like Jamal who remind us that grace and courage are even louder. What would you have done in his place? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire hope and change.